You just watched a putt roll dead center from 12 feet. And if you're anything like me, some part of you is quietly furious because nobody ever told you it was this simple. I spent years believing I needed lessons. I did not. What fixed my putting was written down more than 100 years ago and then quietly buried. Here is what I found. The single biggest thing standing between you and sinking putts is not talent, not an expensive putter, and not a coach charging you by the hour. It is one forgotten habit that every great putter used before the money got involved. And the trail to it started, of all places, on a folded page of a book from 1896 that I almost put back on the shelf. By the end of this, I will hand you the exact method, and it comes from a scientist at the University of Calgary who proved it with cameras and numbers. Stay with me, because the last piece is the one that changed everything for me. And I promise you this works on the carpet in your living room tonight with the same putter you already own. You do not need a green, a coach, or a single new dollar spent. Let me take you back to how this started, because it did not start on a golf course. It started in a secondhand bookstore on a rainy afternoon. I was killing time, running my finger along a shelf of old sporting books, when I pulled out a small green cloth-bound volume titled The Game of Golf. It was written by a man named Willie Park Jr. and published in 1896. Park was not some armchair theorist. He won the Open Championship twice, in 1887 and again in 1889, and he wrote one line in that book that I could not stop thinking about for weeks. He wrote that a man who can putt is a match for anyone. Think about what that means. More than 125 years ago, one of the best players alive was telling you that the long game, the powerful drives, the athletic swing, none of it mattered as much as the quiet little stroke on the green. The great equalizer, the old man who could barely reach the green in three, could still beat the young powerhouse if he could putt. So my first question was simple. If putting is the great equalizer, and if a champion said so in plain print in 1896, why does almost nobody putt well today? Why do we all assume we need a lesson? That question is what sent me down the trail. Because the more I read from that era, the more I realize these old players treated putting as a craft you could learn on your own, not a mystery you had to pay a professional to unlock. Park described exactly where to put your eyes, exactly how to hold the club, exactly how still to keep your body. It was all there. It was almost insultingly simple. But here is the first thing that did not fit. If it was written down this plainly in 1896, somebody had to work to make us forget it. And that is where the story turns dark. Let me jump forward now to what I discovered about who benefited from you not knowing this. There was a man named Walter Travis. They called him the Old Man because he did not even pick up a golf club seriously until he was almost 35 years old. No natural talent, no childhood on the links, and yet in 1904, Walter Travis traveled to England and won the British Amateur Championship. An American, largely self-taught, beating the best golfers in the birthplace of the game. He did it with his putting. Witnesses said he was uncanny on the greens, holing putts from everywhere. Now here's the part that made the hair on my arms stand up. Travis used a particular putter, a center-shafted club known as the Schenectady putter, named after the town in New York where it was made. It helped ordinary golfers aim and roll the ball truer. And 6 years after Travis embarrassed the establishment with it in 1910, the governing body in Britain banned that putter, banned it. And the ban stayed in place for over 40 years, all the way until 1952. That was my first real evidence that putting was not just forgotten by accident. When a simple tool lets an amateur beat the professionals, someone with authority has a reason to make that tool disappear. And when the tool is gone, what are you left needing instead? Lessons, expensive putters, a steady stream of things you have to keep paying for. I want to be careful here, because I am not telling you there is one cartoon villain in a dark room. What I am telling you is that An entire industry grew up around the idea that putting is hard and mysterious and that you cannot fix it yourself. Coaches sell hours. Manufacturers sell putters that cost more than $400. Magazines sell tips that contradict last month's tips. The whole machine runs on one belief, the belief that you cannot do this alone. But before I could test anything, I had to answer a smaller question that had been nagging me. What exactly did these old masters do that we stopped doing? Because a quote about being a match for anyone is inspiring, but it does not tell you where to stand or how to swing. So let me take you to the specific mechanical secret I dug out next, and this is where it gets practical. The first thing every old manual agreed on was the position of the eyes. Not the hands, not the feet, the eyes. Park and the riders who followed him were obsessed with getting your eyes directly over the ball, or just barely inside it. And for years I read that and thought, so what? It is just my eyes. Then I understood why it matters. And it genuinely annoyed me that nobody had ever said it this clearly. When your eyes are directly over the ball, you see the line to the hole the way it truly is. When your eyes are inside the line, too far back towards your body, your brain sees the line curving off to the right, and you aim left to compensate without even knowing it. When your eyes are outside the line, past the ball, you do the opposite. You aim right. You are missing putts before you ever move the club, and you have no idea because your own eyes are lying to you about where the hole is. Here is the test I did on my own floor, and you can do it tonight. Get into your putting stance over a ball, take a second ball, and hold it right at the bridge of your nose, between your eyes. Let it drop. If your eyes are in the right place, that ball lands right on top of the ball on the floor, or a hair inside it towards your feet. If it lands way inside or way outside, you just found the reason half your putts drift offline. It cost me nothing. It took 10 seconds. And it corrected an error I had been paying for in missed putts for years. That one clue snapped into place for me. Eyes over the ball. Simple, provable, free. But it opened a much bigger question, because getting your aim right does nothing if your stroke wobbles. And the stroke was where all the confusion lived. Every source seemed to say something different about the hands and the wrists and the arms. That is where I hit a wall. And that is where I found the second name that mattered. His name was Dave Pells. And unlike the old Scottish pros, Pells came at this from a completely different world. He was a physicist. He spent years working for the space agency, for NASA, studying data and instruments. He was not a natural golfer either. He was a man who trusted numbers over feelings. And when he turned that scientific mind onto the putting green, he did something almost nobody had done. He measured everything. What Pells found blew apart the way I had been taught to putt. He found that the small muscles, the wrists and the hands, are the enemy of a consistent stroke. They are fast, they are twitchy, and they break down under pressure. On the last putt of the day, when your nerves are up, your hands betray you. But the big muscles, the shoulders, they are slow and steady and reliable. They do not flinch. So the method the old masters felt their way toward, Pells proved with data. You putt with your shoulders, not your hands. You let your arms and the club hang down and form a triangle from one shoulder, down the arms, to the club, and back up to the other shoulder. And then you rock that whole triangle back and forth like the pendulum of a grandfather clock. The wrists stay quiet. The hands do nothing but hold on. The shoulders do the work. I remember the first evening I tried it seriously. I set up in my hallway with a ball and an upside-down glass as a target. For the first 10 minutes it felt strange, almost robotic, because I was so used to flicking at the ball with my hands. But by the 20th putt, something clicked. The ball started rolling the same distance every time, the same speed, the same line. It was boring, and boring is exactly what you want on a green. Boring means repeatable. Repeatable means putts drop. And there is a number from Pells's work that I want you to hold on to because it is the most quietly devastating fact in all of putting. He studied thousands of putts and found that amateur golfers leave the vast majority of their missed putts short of the hole. Not long. Short. The ball dies before it ever reaches the cup, so it never had a chance to go in. There's an old saying, never up, never in, and Pells put hard evidence behind it. A putt that stops short of the hole has a 0% chance of dropping. Zero. You gave up the putt before it arrived. So already I had two pieces. Get your eyes over the ball so your aim is true. Rock the shoulders like a pendulum so your stroke is steady, and make sure the ball at least reaches the hole. Two clues, both from real people, both provable on my own floor. And Willie Park Jr., standing there in 1896, was telling you that you can. Now, if this trail of buried knowledge is the kind of thing that pulls at you the way it pulled at me, I want to mention that I have gone much deeper on all of it in a series of books called First Fix and System Complete. Everything I traced, the old manuals, the band equipment, the science, and the practice methods that cost nothing, it is all laid out there in full, in the order I found it, so you can follow the same trail yourself. You can find the details in the description below. But right now, let us get back to what I discovered when I decided to stop reading and start testing. So I had my contradiction. The old text said it was simple. The modern world said it was hard. Somebody was wrong, and I was going to find out who by testing it myself. But I could feel there was still something missing, because I could set up perfectly, stroke it perfectly in practice, and then on a real green over a putt that mattered, I would still pull it or push it. My mechanics were fine. Something in my head was breaking the whole thing at the last second, and that missing piece turned out to be the biggest secret of all. But before I get to it, I have to stop and talk directly to the one person I think has been quietly left out of this whole conversation. Because maybe you are sitting there thinking, this is all fine for someone with a backyard, or a membership at a club, or money to burn on gadgets. Maybe you are thinking you do not have a green, you do not have a practice facility, you do not have room. I want to talk to you specifically, because everything I have found says you have been sold a lie about needing any of that. Here is the truth. You do not need a golf green to become a great putter. In fact, the flat, short carpet in your living room or hallway is one of the best putting surfaces you will ever practice on, and here is why. A carpet is smooth and true. It does not have the little imperfections of a real green, so when your ball rolls offline on the carpet, you know for a fact it was your stroke, not the surface. The carpet tells you the truth about what your hands and shoulders just did. So here is exactly what I want you to do tonight, with nothing but what you already own. Find a stretch of carpet, at least 6 or 7 feet of it. Set down a coin, a dime, as your target, not a cup, a dime. A dime is smaller than a hole, so if you can consistently stop your ball on top of a dime, a real hole will feel enormous by comparison. Now take 3 balls, or if you do not have golf balls, honestly practice the stroke itself with any small ball you can find and work only on rolling it the exact distance to stop on that coin. Do not aim for the coin at first, just practice speed. Roll ball after ball, trying to get each one to die right on the dime. This one drill, distance control on a flat carpet, fixes more putts than any lesson I ever paid for, because remember what Pells found. Most missed putts are missed on distance, not direction. They come up short. If you can control how far the ball rolls from your own living room, you have solved the biggest problem in putting without spending a cent or leaving your house. And here is the part that matters for you especially. This is not a young person's game. Putting is the one part of golf where age is not a disadvantage. It does not need strength. It does not need flexibility. It does not need fast reflexes. It needs a still body, a quiet mind, and a repeatable stroke. And those are things that actually get better with patience and years. Willie Park Jr. knew this in 1896. The great equalizer. You can start tonight on the floor you already have, and you can genuinely become better than golfers half your age who never learned this. So now you have the setup, the stroke, and a way to practice it at home for free. But I told you there was one last piece, the piece that fixed the thing happening inside my head, and this is the one I traced all the way to a research lab. This is the secret that pulled everything together. For months I could not understand why my stroke fell apart under pressure. Perfect on the carpet, shaky on the green. Then I found the work of a scientist named Dr. Joan Vickers at the University of Calgary. And what she discovered, using eye tracking cameras in the 1990s, is the single most important thing I have ever learned about putting, and almost no golfer I know has ever heard of it. Vickers wired up athletes with cameras that tracked exactly where their eyes were pointing, moment by moment, down to fractions of a second. And when she studied golfers on the green, she found a difference between the ones who made putts and the ones who missed that had nothing to do with their swing. It was in their eyes. She called it the quiet eye. Here is what she found. The best putters, right before and during their stroke, fixed their gaze on a single spot and held it there, perfectly still, for a long, steady moment. Somewhere around 2 to 3 seconds of unbroken focus, locked on one point, without their eyes darting around. The poor putters had a quick, nervous, jumpy gaze. Their eyes flicked from the ball to the hole to the ball to their hands and back, right up until the moment of the stroke. Their eyes never went quiet, and so their putts never went in. The longer and stiller the gaze, the more putts dropped. It was that clear in the data. The quiet eye, a calm, unbroken stare at one spot, held through the stroke, was the invisible thing separating the great putters from the rest. And it was not something you were born with. It was something you could train, starting immediately. When I read that, everything from the whole trail finally clicked together. The old masters kept their bodies still, and the science says the eyes have to be still too. The stillness was the secret the whole time. Not the putter, not the lesson, stillness of body, stillness of stroke, and above all, stillness of the eyes. So let me give you the exact method, the thing you came here for, and you can test it this weekend. When you stand over a putt, after you have picked your line, I want you to pick one tiny specific spot on the back of the ball. Not the whole ball, one dimple, one small mark. Lock your eyes onto that single spot, and then keep your eyes frozen on it, completely still, through your entire stroke, and hold that gaze on the empty spot where the ball used to be for a full second after the ball is gone. Do not chase the ball with your eyes. Do not look up to see where it went. Let your ears tell you it dropped. Keep your eyes quiet. Count it in your head if you have to. Lock on and hold. 1, 2, and stroke and stay. That deliberate held gaze forces the quiet eye that Vickers measured in the champions. It settles your whole nervous system. It stops the last second flinch. And it works because your eyes and your hands are connected in ways you cannot consciously feel. When your eyes go still, your hands go still with them. And here is the version that sounds crazy, but is backed by the same idea. And some of the best putters in the world do it. On short putts, the ones inside about 6 feet, try looking at the hole instead of the ball while you stroke. Look at your target, not at the ball, exactly the way you would if you were tossing a ball into a basket. You do not stare at the ball in your hand when you throw it. You stare at where you want it to go. There is a professional named Jordan Spieth who has holed thousands of pressure putts looking straight at the hole, and once you understand the quiet eye, you understand why it works. Your eyes give the target to your hands, and your hands obey. Try it on the carpet tonight with that dime. You will be shocked how many more go in. So there it is, the whole trail, from a green cloth book in 1896 to a putter band in 1910 to a NASA physicist counting putts that came up short to a scientist in Calgary with eye-tracking cameras finding the quiet eye. Every one of them was pointing at the same buried truth. Putting is not a mystery. It is stillness. Eyes over the ball so your aim is honest. Shoulders like a pendulum so your stroke is boring and repeatable. Speed that gets the ball to the hole so it has a chance to drop. And a quiet, unbroken gaze that holds steady through the stroke so your nerves never get to ruin it. None of it needs a lesson. None of it needs a $400 putter. None of it needs a green. It needs the club you already own, a stretch of carpet, a coin, and a little patience. And it was all written down and proven long before anyone convinced you that you needed to keep paying to learn it. Let me tell you what I really recovered on this trail. Because it was not just a putting tip. It was the proof that I was never broken and I was never short on talent. I had simply been kept away from something simple that used to belong to everyone. And getting it back felt like reclaiming something that had been quietly taken from me. If you are the kind of person who wants the whole trail and not just the headline, who wants to know why a thing works and where it came from before you trust it, then you and I are the same and you are in the right place. So let me ask you something specific, and I genuinely want your answer. When you tried the ball drop test, the one where you drop a ball from the bridge of your nose to check your eyes, did it land inside the ball or outside it? That one tells me everything about how you have been aiming your whole life. Tell me in the comments, inside or outside. I read them and I answer. And if you want to come with me, this is not really about golf. It is about a whole shelf of practical things that used to be common knowledge and got quietly replaced by things you have to keep paying for. That is what we do here. We find them, we trace them, and we take them back. Subscribe and stand with the people reclaiming this stuff, because the next trail I am chasing is even stranger. It starts with an old almanac claim that you can read a green's break just by the color of the grass, the way the greenkeepers did a century ago, long before anyone sold you a gadget to do it. I tested it. It should not work. It does. And I will show you exactly how the next time. You just saw how simple this really is, but here I only showed you the overview. Inside the practical wisdom circle, I pick up right where this video stopped. And there you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Folks like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime. One click.